Well, what an explosive start we have had to the month of November. Today we are talking about family feuds on the island of Crete. So welcome to my channel, and I'm Lisa if you haven't met me before, and if you have met me before, then welcome back. Now obviously this is quite a serious subject, vendetta, but my first exposure to a feud, let's say, between families was when I very first came here. I worked for a tourist office, and I worked for a gentleman who was very lovely, but he was a typical Cretan. He would shout a lot and always try and get his wife to feed me, which was really embarrassing. He used to say I was too thin and make her bring me food all the time, which I'm sure she loved. But he used to have this argument on the phone all the time about land. So I'm a very curious person. So one day I asked him and I said, can I please ask you what it is, what is the problem? Why are you always shouting and screaming about this piece of land? So then he said to me that basically what had happened was his wife had got left a piece of land, and her sister had already built a house, and they had built the house 500 centimetres on their piece of land. So he was basically trying to negotiate with the family to knock the house down. And he was getting a lawyer to get them to knock the house down. I mean, who does that? Honestly, I can't imagine saying to my sister, I'm ever so sorry, but you've got to knock down your whole house because you've stolen 500 centimetres from me. I suppose on the flip side, maybe they shouldn't have stolen the 500 centimetres, but once the occasion had happened, I suppose maybe he could have, I even said to him, can you not maybe just build a smaller house? And he was like, no, absolutely adamant that he was going to get them to knock the house down because he wanted back his stolen piece of land. So these things do happen quite often here in Greece, which I have now discovered having lived here for 30 years. So let's talk about what's actually happened. So the village in question is called Vorizia. It's situated on the south coast. It's about 50 kilometres from Heraklion. It has a population of about 500 people. And the feud is between two families that have known each other for generations. And according to the local news channels, it has something to do with land. So what happened on the 31st of October, which was a Friday, a bomb exploded in a house in the village. It wasn't a house that was being lived in, it was a house that was being renovated, but then this caused a shootout the following morning in the village, which just sounds crazy here in Crete. So for a whole hour, the two families apparently were shooting at each other. There was Kalashnikov rifles, there was pistols, and the following day the police found hundreds of casings from the guns and the bullets that were fired at each other. Very sadly, two people lost their lives in this chaos. So a lady who was completely innocent, she was just visiting the village for her father's memorial, a father of 5 children, and also there was a handful of people that were injured that were taken to the hospital. So as is customary, the funerals took place very, very quickly. There was a lot of security at the funerals, obviously, because of the situation. And the funeral of the man that died, this was awful because the poor wife couldn't bury her husband until all her children were baptised, and 3 of them had not yet been baptised. So she had to go to the church with her children, baptise her children, and then bury her husband. I just can't imagine what this woman has had to go through. And all this because of fighting over land. It just blows your mind. It absolutely blows your mind.
So let me tell you more about this. Now, family feuds here in Crete are more common than you think. We have even experienced this in our own Greek family, where a rift went on for decades and it split a family in 2. Luckily, like ours, most are decided in the courts and thankfully don't end up under tragic circumstances. The outcome is very rarely happy for everyone, and the feud silently continues and bubbles silently over the years. In fact, it's actually quite rare here to find a Cretan family that doesn't have some kind of dispute going on. Nearly all of our friends on the island have had issues at some point, either now or in the past. You see, the problem here is that there is often a lot of land and property that has been handed down over the generations. I mean, that could be your Yaz house up in the mountains, or it could just be a piece of grazing land that is not very valuable. So it can come from great-grandparents to their children, then to their grandchildren, and also cousins, and that's generally where the problems start. And the more pieces of land and property involved, the more disputes there are. You see, land in Crete was rarely sold. It was always held onto. Land isn't just property, it's part of the ethos, which is the household here in Greece. It represents your family line, your ancestors, and your social standing. Selling it could mean weakening or ending the family's fortunes and future. So as you can imagine, this can become very complicated if there are many family members. Some that want to keep it, some that maybe want to sell it, some that want to build on it, and some that actually do that. And then on top of that, there are disputes over boundaries, access rights to land, grazing rights, water sources, olive groves, and the list goes on and on and on. And now you can see why problems may arise. And these problems can be so common here in Crete, I've even had friends myself that have had some of these issues. There are also other reasons like family honour that cause vendettas here on the island. Cretan mountain communities historically placed a very high value on this, so an insult, humiliation, injury, infidelity, forbidden relationships, even disagreements over dowries, no matter how small, could have been seen as dishonouring the whole family, and responding was viewed as necessary to restore respect. It even happened in our very own village years ago when our children were young. One man had teased another man and his family for decades until the other man could take it no more. Let's just say it ended very badly in the end. If a family didn't respond to a perceived wrong, they risked being viewed as appearing weak, so social pressure basically fueled retaliation, and where formal law enforcement was weak in the mountainous areas, families often just took justice into their own hands, which encouraged cycles of revenge. Cretans have a long tradition of weapon ownership, mainly tied to resistance against occupying powers in the past, and of course hunting, which is very popular on the island, and ready access to guns sometimes escalated conflicts that might otherwise have remained small. So how were these issues dealt with in the past? Well, normally somebody from the area, either an elder of the village, a priest, or a wise local person would be drafted in to mediate between the feuding families. They would listen to either side and try to come to some agreement between the two to stop things from escalating anymore. Sometimes a contract would have been drawn up that both parties needed to agree to and sign, or sometimes just a handshake sealed the deal. And other times extreme measures would be taken, like a wedding that joined the two families, or even one member of one family baptising a child from the other family, therefore joining the two families as one. Villages were small and everyone knew everyone and everyone knew everything, so if one party refused to accept the peace, they risked social isolation and loss of reputation. Nowadays, we are more likely to hear of vendettas as old stories or local legends rather than current reality, although, as with the case that happened recently in Crete, every now and again these old rivalries erupt and end unfortunately in tragic circumstances. So just to wrap things up, I want to reassure you once again that crime on the Greek islands is really low, especially here in Crete. Honestly, we're at the bottom of the scale compared to most of the European countries and even globally. It's one of the reasons why we chose to bring up our family here. So do let me know in the comments if you or your families have experienced something yourself like this in Greece, or maybe you have something similar going on in your country. Where I grew up in the UK, I had never really heard of anything like this before, only what I'd seen in the movies, and couldn't imagine that it was still happening today. This is not the first big case I've seen in Crete. There have been several cases over the past 30 years, but let's hope and pray that it will be the last.
So thank you for watching to the end as always. If you'd like to join me for some more stories, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell, and of course like the video if you liked it. And leave me some comments if you've got your own stories about disputes on your islands where you live, or in your countries where you live. It can't just be Greece, surely. Maybe it is. Okay, see you soon. Have a good week. Bye.